accordingly. And I want to start with an alignment. So find a position, get comfortable, and close your eyes. So just become aware. Become aware of your body. Taking a breath to let go of anything you're bringing into this space. And use your sense awareness. Becoming aware first of your body. Feel the sensations physically. There's pain somewhere, discomfort, just the feeling of your clothing against your skin. Sense into your emotional body. There's emotions that are present. Sense into that feeling of what brought you here, what drew you, the interest you had or the inspiration. And take that awareness out further into your environment, to the space you're in. And feel the place that you're in and the energy that that holds. Maybe there's other beings around and you can sense them. Maybe there's an energy that the day holds, you're sensing into. And bring your awareness out further to the greater environments, maybe the community, the town, the place that you are in a bigger scale. And the energies that that holds, the movements of energy. And see if you can feel the ways that this energy moves between these planes, from inside you to your environment you're sitting in, to the outside world. Information passes between all of these layers and levels. See if you can sense the movement of that information, maybe from your heart to the heart of someone else. Or from some trees nearby to you. And feel into the sense that we are in a big soup of vibration. Almost like a brain where messages are being sent back and forth between different parts at different speeds. And somehow all of this information passes through a greater intelligence, as well as all the small beings. There's something that holds it that's even bigger. Something that organizes. There's something in you that organizes, bringing to focus the information precisely needed in any given moment. That allows you to give out the exact information you need to give out at any given moment. And that this information flows in between. All the time, it's flowing in between. It's between objects, between them, the earth and us, between two trees, between the water and the sky, between this planet and the other planets in our solar system. Like a great neurological network. Not holding on to any particular part of this, but holding it all loosely. Bring your awareness back into your own heart, into your own body. And when you're ready, back to presence with the others here on our screens. Welcome. Thanks for showing up today. Yeah, for those who came a little bit late, I have it on record, so plan your visibility accordingly. And first, I want to ask, who here identifies as someone who practices magic? You can raise your hand.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear part of the question.
Who here identifies as someone who practices magic? Okay, and maybe kind of practices, not sure if they do or not. Interested, figuring out what this is. Okay, just getting a sense here. So first I want to start with sort of a definition of what I'm talking about, the subtle languages. Because I feel like this is the basis of all magic, is how subtle, how this invisible information is transferred. And we need this language, we need some kind of language to enact differences on each other. So language is basically vibration. Physical language is this vocal vibration, like the vibration of our vocal cords and how it hits the air. But then there's also layers of that, like our physical voice, we can make sounds, but then we can make sound imbued with our soul. We can make sound imbued with purpose. And then we can make sound imbued with spirit or monad, and those sounds come out differently, and they have different effects. They have different interactions on the world. And everything in existence relies on vibration. Everything in existence is a vibration and interacts with other things in existence through vibration. So in talking about the subtle languages, I'm talking just about the language of vibration and what holds all of that together. And in magic, this becomes particularly important because this is the way you interact. This is the way you affect change in the world, is by changing vibration. It's the only way that magic works. It's the language of magic, is how to affect change in vibration. And that change happens both ways. It's a two-way street. There's not just like I do something and I make change outside of myself. There's always going to be, I do something and then it reflects back to me and I get vibration back from it. So the subtle languages, there's always communication happening between objects, between many objects, between two objects. So language is the vibration that communicates what's going on. And in the greater sense, in the monadic sense, there's an intelligence that encapsulates it all. But there's also all these layers. Bring out this chart because this is sort of the basis of what I'm going to be working with today. This was from Occult Cosmology, and I don't know if you can see right here. This is a chart of spirit, soul, and matter. And there's basically just 9 boxes, and you can kind of get the idea of it. So, spirit, soul, matter, or like spirit being monad. And then the same 3 boxes over here, spirit, soul, and matter. So where they converge, like there's matter, there's soul matter, there's spirit matter, there's matter, soul, spirit, soul, and soul, and so on. And so in what I'm going to be talking about today, we're going to talk about those 9 levels of communication and how they interact with one another and how it can affect, my cat's opening the door, how they affect one another. So the reason this is important is, say, okay, you're a magician in Bose, Montana, and your boyfriend dumps you and you're really pissed, okay? And so you're a magician, so you're like, oh, holy fuck, I am so pissed at this person, I'm going to create a tsunami. Like, your boyfriend lives in Los Angeles, I want a fucking tsunami to take that fucker out, okay? So you do your magic, you do your spells, you get all your things together, and you do your magic, and not much happens, except maybe you feel a little better at the end of it. You got to enact a little revenge fantasy. But in the greater world, not much happened. So partly you can say, like, what happened here is someone on the matter level, someone in the very personality part of matter, is enacting a vibrational change from that place of matter, being in this place of emotionality and being wanting to just affect something for their own personal desire. And it may get into sort of the astral plane of that, like emotions come in this cross between matter soul. So sort of in that plane. But they're talking to these greater powers of the planet. And they're like, hey, dude, I really want to, like, this guy pissed me off, do something about it, okay? But you're talking in this language in which that energy that you're talking to, it just hears this little buzz, like a fly, like, that energy has no interest in enacting whatever that desire is, because you're coming from a place, you're speaking this particular language, and it doesn't even register it, besides just maybe this slight little buzz in the background. Where okay, so now you're a magician and you've done a lot of work, and you've moved out of some of that personality stuff, or maybe not even moved out, but you know when you're in it and know when you're not, and you're into your soul work and you're doing soul work, and you finally have purpose, and you are trying to do some greater purpose, something big, a project, and you put that energy of purpose in it, and suddenly there's a plane of existence that can understand what you're talking about, the soul plane. If you get into the soul matter, then that plane can understand what you're talking about, and suddenly you have communication. You have a two-way street. You have a place where energy comes in and it can act something and make an effect in the world. So you can do your spells, you can do your incantations, you can have your altar, and suddenly there's this other energy that actually can listen and respond. Whether it does or not sort of depends on what you're asking and how you're asking and all the other energy that gets put into it. But there's a place of possible communication because you're speaking the same language. You're speaking on the plane of something that can enact the change that you're asking. And then, you get into things like monadic, where so like on the matter plane, you are trying to enact something on this very physical plane, and you may be coming from a very base place of personality, desire. Now there's some really, we'll get into that, but there's some really powerful things that can happen on that plane. But yeah, you may be coming from that place. You can only enact things on that level. And then like you get into soul and you get purpose put into it. And you are able to then actually enact changes on the material plane coming from that place. Now you get into monad, and basically identification starts to disappear here. Like you are no longer an I, you have become the bigger I. So you're less you're less of a magician at that point and more the magic. Like when you're coming from the place of total disidentification with the individual, then you're a place where that channel can be open for the greater intelligence to move through. So you become the instruments, or you become the spell of the greater intelligence. So there's sort of a different way of perception from each of those layers and from each of those levels. Now that's kind of really, that's, going, you're talking like third, fourth initiation kind of magic at that point. But that's just like a base example. I wanted to start off with, to get us started. Let me get my notes up. So yeah, I want to talk about the magic of the different planes. Like in my tradition, we love these numbers, and in this tradition, in the Trans-Himalayan tradition, but also I come from like a Taoist mysticism standpoint. And there's the Trinity, soul, matter, soul, monad. In my tradition, we call it Jing, Qi, and Shen. But basically this like physical body, the energy or the soul body, and then, the spirit, the Shen, the monadic energy of the dark. Basically, by then you're working with the dark. And in these layers, we have the three parts, but 3 times 3, as you crossed in that chart I showed you. You've got layers of those. And there's the matter energy, the soul energy, and the monadic energy. And the magic that can happen in each is actually, it's super powerful. It's not that matter magic is less powerful. It has the potential of coming more from personality, but there's super deep magic that can happen on that level. There's super deep magic that can happen on the soul level, and then super deep magic that happens on the monadic level. And inner affecting change on all of those levels, there's different things that you can actually affect. And so this is where it becomes into the precision of knowing what kind of language is knowing what you're trying to affect and what language you need to speak in order to affect it. when we get up into like the languages of the dark, there, I mean, all along the way, there, you need more understanding, more awareness, and kind of more, not necessarily training, but the deep resonance to get there. There's a lot of personal work that needs to happen in order to get to these different layers of magic. And so I want to just go briefly into like what are the layers of the magic, and then lead us through some exercises to sort of each connect with those different layers. So the magic of matter and the languages of matter are on this very physical plane, and it's the densest plane, and it is actually the hardest plane to affect change, which is why the magician in Bose, Montana, you know, can't live out the revenge fantasy so easily. And thank goodness, you know, because if everyone had that power, this world would be total chaos all the time. So matter is really, it's the densest vibration, and it's dense because it counts on the repetition of certain vibrations. So if you think of atomic structure and how atoms are held together, and at the core there's a nucleus and all the electrons move around the nucleus. And it's the core of the nucleus that holds the vibration that keeps the electrons in the proper orbit, making the proper motions. And this is all done, like, they don't have to think about it. It's like the quality of life force that comes from the center that makes this happen. The quality of life force that makes every living thing and every non-living thing part of this whole vibration of life. And so matter on the densest level just repeats this same pattern, repeats and repeats and repeats. And that's what makes it so dense, is because it repeats this so consistently and so frequently. And it's the slowest moving vibration that, yeah, it takes a lot of effort to affect it. That's, I mean, that's why these physical bodies are fragile and also super, super resilient, is because we need this in order to enact anything on this plane that takes so much effort. It takes so much more power to be able to enact on this plane. And so there's great power in matter. And, you know, we enact power just on the physical level, you know, like we can pick something up and move it. We can build something, we can create. You know, getting into the real like power of physical matter, I mean, you have the whole being able to create life, you know, being able to create something in a womb that takes very subtle energies and creates these vibrations that repeat themselves in a certain way, and creates a new life. The creation from a seed, like a tree from the seed, and the plan that it enacts, and basically it looks like it creates something out of nothing. It creates something because it keeps these subtle energies and organizes the world around it, organizes the plane of existence around this density. And it's a fucking miracle, you know, it's a miracle, and it's a rare miracle in this whole plane of cosmic existence that we have these dense bodies that create, like the dense body of my body, the dense body of this planet and the crust of this earth, and the amazing things it has, the mountains and the waterfalls and volcanoes. You know, we create communities and cultures, and yeah, that this density is rare and it's precious, and it is really fucking hard to manifest and to manage. And part of, you know, the whole teachings is that, you know, we are working through the suffering of how hard it is to manage actual density. So I don't want to pretend like the magic of matter is less important because it's denser, because it's sort of lower on the planes of vibration. It's really fucking important. And part of the role of humanity is to be this bridge between spirit and matter. That we are learning how to work with this very physical plane substance. And we're doing the grand experiment so that other galaxies, other beings can also benefit from this grand experiment. And so like the magic that happens in matter is really super fucking important in the bigger picture. Yeah, I don't want it to get pretend like it's anything lesser, because it's really very important. So let me just, while we're in the matter, I'm just going to let's run through the exercise while we're talking about it, rather than going through each one. We'll go through each one separately. So just close your eyes and go inward. And we'll start internally with our own identification with this body that you're in. The language that this body speaks. Which has been influenced by thousands of generations of very specific humans interacting and creating life in very precise ways, thinking all the cultures, all the traumas, everything that has interacted along the way to bring you this particular I into this physical incarnation. And some of these vibrations are the lessons and the karma, the things that are working through, the things that are here to teach. And also feeling into the gifts and the strengths that came through all of these different incarnations. Not only the traumas, but the great triumphs, the significant joys, the things that were built, created. And all of these very precise happenings needed to create this very unique and individual vibration that is you. And feel this unique vibration of you and how it interacts with the world around you. How it interacts either in accordance or not in accordance with your desires, your arrows. Feel how it self organizes around your belief systems, your thoughts, your emotions. And feel outward how it interacts with the other beings, other energies, entities around you. How outer vibrations affect yours. How other people's emotions affect you. How things occurring in other places, in other times, resonate back to you. And I want you to feel into your life in some time in your life where something has manifested and you knew you had a part in it. You knew that some deep part of you was playing a role in how something manifested. Whether it's you doing some ritual to bring more money in, or just you really, really wanting something to happen and then it happening. Whether it was an act of magic or just an act of wishing, desire, as an act of will and discipline. Think of a time in your life where something happened and you knew you had a hand in it. And feeling into that situation, feeling how things were spoken between you and what happened, what manifested. Can feel into what language were you speaking? Where was it coming from? And then feel into also whatever manifested, be it object or thought or action or something very tangible. What came back to you? What's the energy that came back to you in that interaction? Something was created, you had a hand in it, and then something happened, and that vibration came back to you. It might have been a feeling of joy for having had the creation, or maybe a feeling of guilt because you weren't sure if it was the right thing. Whatever it is, just feel into what that vibration that came back to you. Maybe it was whatever manifested really helped someone else, and you felt how the ease and the joy and the help it brought to someone else, or maybe it helped you immensely. And then just take a moment of integration, bringing that information in. And then when you're ready, coming back into presence. And I want to open the space for any reflections or anything that came up in that.
So I didn't really have specific things that I've done to um, that sort of resonated in that way, but I kind of feel like there's a lot of the way my life is through kind of being aware of uh, like what's available or something, and being connected in some way. But I didn't really have like, oh, I did this thing and I wanted this thing. But it's sort of like my whole life has got that process in it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it is it is the basic thing of life, that we have these thoughts, we have these desires, and the world interacts with us in certain ways, to bring them about, especially when they're in alignment with something, or we have enough will to put into it. And that these languages, especially the ones on the material plane, and by material I mean physical, but also there's emotions are considered part of the physical plane as well. So there's like this tangibility that is present, the tangibility of emotions, the tangibility of actual matter, and how it interacts. Um, and how these interactions like they create and also destroy. They create and destroy because we need both. Like there's the life and death that's built into all of these. And I was thinking, I mean, what came up for me in particular was um, I know there's just an energy a few times in my life where I just know something has to happen, and I don't know why, and I'm not sure how it's going to happen, and I just press on. I just like put my nose down, and I'm like, this thing is supposed to happen, and there's a combination of will, and there's a combination of um, generating resources. on this very physical plane of generating the resources in some way. Like I can feel that energetic interaction when there's a need and the need can be fulfilled. You know, like there's a way that it can happen. There's a way that it comes through, and there's a particular energy, whether it be like, oh, I need money and someone loans me money, like something that, oh yeah, well that just makes total sense, or like it that has this very logical, and we can go through the reasoning of it on the material plane, or that I really need this thing, or there's this thing that needs to happen and I don't know why. And then somehow it just like someone else is like, oh, I have this thing and I thought you might want it. You know, like I have this thing, and it just happens in this very magical way. It's like there's a way that these languages go out. That somewhere they are picked up and the resonance comes back to you. And then there's a two-way, because usually when someone enacts that, if it was another person who brings that back, something happens in them too. Like there's an interaction, there's a way that this language is, they're also participating. They're not just there trying to fulfill our destiny or our wish or our desire. There's a way that their interaction in it is, they have put something out into the universe, and this interaction is also fulfilling something for them, that it's filling in a place for them, like that this is the magic in the greater sense of the greater organization of things, is this way that we interact with one another with synchronicity and mutual benefits, or sometimes mutual destruction, but benefit in the greater picture, like a growth happening in a greater picture on this very, organized by something bigger than ourselves. So when we're working with very physical matter, the languages tend to be like, we can use just asking our neighbor, like, hey, can I borrow this thing that I really need because I need to do this project? And that's a really great way. And sometimes it's kind of funny because you hear people talk like, oh, I'm doing this great spell, I'm doing this thing, and I'm doing all this magic to draw this in. And you're like, you could have just asked somebody, you could have just gone to someone and say like, you know what, I actually need help this weekend. Can you help me? Rather than, trying to do this very, trying to affect change on this very energetic level, when the density of matter is actually what's needed, like the vibration of your voice, just asking someone else for something, like that is also magic. There's magic in that density. There's magic in that plane of existence. I would say one of the realms of this kind of magic and this kind of language is the shamanic realm, which is a very physical realm. The shamanic realm deals with these very dense experiences, but in the vibration of it. So you're going into a realm of vibration, and sometimes it feels very imaginal, but you're dealing with a very, like, what is in the natural world, the things in the natural world. And on this level, we're being, what part of those different levels, we have the personality level, like the magician in Bose, Montana, that can sometimes lead us astray. And we have the very, if we go into like the soul matter level, where there's purpose and identity with purpose. And if we go into the monadic level of matter, we're dealing with like black dragon energy, like the real dense power, the pure raw energetic power of matter, and that organizational force of the density and rawness in matter, and learning to communicate at these three levels, the sense of this, like, there is this thing, it can't be controlled. Like the black dragon energy is not something that can be controlled or manipulated or tricked or made to do things, but you can come into a resonance with it where you are recognizing that in yourself and being able to enact things because you're in a resonance with it, because you know you are it and it is you already. You can come into the soul level of matter where you have purpose, and your will and drive is connected to this purpose. And so the matter manifests around that density of purpose in something that needs to happen. And then the matter part, you know, just the very physical, as I said, like call your neighbor, like, hey, can I borrow this thing that I really need to make this other thing happen? You know, can I use your hands? Can you help me? Going and getting the things that you need. Like there's this very physical interaction that can happen on that plane. Yeah, are there any questions at this point? Anything anyone wants to add? Great. Well, let's move into the soul plane of language then. So where matter comes through us in the density and in emotionality and in the pure physicality, soul languages speak to us on this level of intuition, of knowing, of purpose. Soul languages are about the organization of purpose, the organization of greater intelligence into purpose. And our interactions in this plane, they start to go both ways. They start to go horizontal and or vertical and horizontal, where matter is very much on the plane of horizontal. Like a lot of the magic we do there is on the plane of affecting the horizontal. You get into soul and you start to the vertical and the horizontal. So you're enacting the languages on this plane, but you're imbuing it also with the languages of the connection to the greater intelligence coming from consciousness, from the greater consciousness, not just the consciousness like black dragon consciousness, but the consciousness of, you know, the black hole. Ultimately, they come out to be the one, but as we're like delineating here, we're coming to the different layers. So soul languages are imbued with this sense of purpose, and purpose comes to us in different ways. Some people have this very internal sense of like they know exactly what they need to do and why and how it needs to happen. Now, I'm not so much that way. Like much of mine comes in through intuition or knowing, or just like this sense like that has to happen and I need this thing to happen, and how to organize something to happen on that plane. And these languages work in less direct ways. So when we pick things up on the soul plane, there's a lot more of a feeling of, what is it? Response. It's a feeling of response rather than I need to enact something. It's a feeling of I'm acting in response to something else. There's a purpose happening and I am responsive to that purpose. And the way I'm responsive to it is it organizes me to make something happen. And this plane, we're starting to get away from the individual I of what I need, what I want, what I know I have to do, and into what I know needs to happen on a collective level. So this is part of the horizontal level, because we're getting into the place of less identification with the smaller I, and in between identification with the bigger I, there's this place. And this is actually the place of humanity. This is the role of humanity, is to be this bridge in between these two the smaller I and the bigger I, where matter is focused on the individual, and consciousness is disassociated with the individual and focused on the greater. And then there's the soul place where these two things have to come together. And you're moving between the spectrum. It's like the breath in and the breath out. And you need both. It's not that consciousness is more important and the small I is not important. Like, this actual physical manifestation of us on this planet is the only way we get shit done, is the only way we can actually enact the changes and make things happen on this very physical way, but imbuing it with the consciousness and coming in. So on the soul plane, we're working with a lot of the group, what's bringing something in for a greater purpose. And when you're learning to speak on these languages and doing magic on these places, this is the place where some things can get kind of muddy, because we still have enough of the small identification that we notice the stuff that gets in the way. We notice the places where we're acting from more of the personality than we are from the greater consciousness. We're noticing the places in the soul communications. This is where our work, our personal growth work, gets really fucking important, because we're starting to get more power. And with that power comes the responsibility of being able to wield it responsibly. And to speak these languages, like, as I say, like when we're talking about the magician from Bose, Montana, on the soul level, there's just this buzz, like it's hardly even registers if you're working in a place of personality. But if you start to bring soul into it, then it's like, oh, there's a recognition, there's a connection. We're working for something greater than just the little, our personal desires, our personal way of being. We're working for a collective way of being. And so the language gets bigger and broader, and the little I is really important to manifest it, but it's not as important in bringing the vibrations in. And also the vibrations we're feeling tend to be on a bigger level, because it's they get diffused. We can be very specific in the matter level, and it feels very diffuse in the purpose, because the purpose on a soul level, there's many, many different ways it can manifest. We need this particular energy brought in, and there's many ways it can manifest. So it can sometimes get muddy, and it can also bring into focus the places where we're blocking the way, where we're in our own way, where the things that we're dealing with are preventing us from actually manifesting, preventing us from making things happen. So there's a lot of work on this level in the communications of vibration of soul. There's that work, because all this stuff becomes visible. We know what we need to do, or go back and do our personal work on, and then we come back. Okay, is that vibration clear now? Can we make something happen? Can something manifest on a bigger level? And also then you're bringing in a lot of different other souls, whether they be souls of other like humans, or the souls of other entities that we're working with. So there's a lot more power that comes with this. When we start speaking this language, we can start to speak the language of water, of bodies of water. We can start to speak the language of trees, because there's not so much identification on the small I. We can find those places where we find the tree in us. And so we learn to communicate. We can communicate with that. We find the place where we find the mountain in us, and we can communicate with that. We find the place where we find the other human being we're working with, and we can communicate and work with that. So there's a disidentification of an individual, and more identification that we are all created from the same substances. And I can come back and identify with this particular thing because I know I have it in me, and I can get to that place of really knowing that in me. And so I can affect the change from inside myself, even though it's something outside of myself. It's going to be an internal job, where on the matter plane, you're like, I see this, it needs to happen. On the soul plane, I am that. How do I make that how do I create that in me? How do I do this inside myself so it manifests outside of myself? And this happens like in our personal work. Of course, this is sort of the personal growth work, is like, you know, change always comes from the inside, and whatever I'm looking, like whatever this person does that really annoys me is usually a reflection of myself, and how do I change myself? So there's this personal growth aspect of identifying in this way, but there's also this aspect of being able to affect change on a larger plane, because you can identify with the smaller I in anything you're interacting with on this plane, on the soul plane. And you can find the joint purpose, the thing that creates the most flow of energy between you and this other object. And then it's also less about what I individually desire and more about what creates the best flow of energy, what creates the best outcome for everyone, which may or may not actually benefit me personally. It may benefit the whole collective, and personally, I have to sacrifice a little bit. Personally, this other thing happens that is not so great for me. Or personally, I go through a dark night of the soul to get me there. You know, that you have to do the work. There's a lot more work on this plane of communications. Is everyone getting this? Is this being clear? Okay. So I want to take us through a second little exercise going into the soul plane. So go ahead and get comfortable. Close your eyes. And however is natural to you, connect with your soul. Connect with this place of the jewel in the lotus. Of a place where a crystallized beam of light can be focused from the higher planes and hierarchy to you, from you down into the plane of matter, and from the plane of matter into you, up into planes of hierarchy. So feeling this vertical alignment. And then extending out horizontally to the web that's created between souls, be that souls of human beings, souls of mountains, souls of plants. I'm feeling this great network, kind of like a neural network, a giant brain working. Thinking about your life, your individual life, and a place in your life or a time or an occurrence where you felt something happened on a bigger level. You felt a sense of purpose and belonging because of this sense of purpose. and the creation or manifestation of something along the lines of this purpose you felt along a web, whether it be a web of human beings, or a web of other kinds of beings and entities. And feel that energetic resonance in you of something that manifests as a group. Feel how that feels in your individual body to feel this group purpose, this group manifestation. How does it affect you on a very individual level? And then expand out and feel the greater sense of purpose, of organization. And how does it feel there as a larger body, as being one part of something bigger? What happens when there's this greater web of interaction? What happens to the languages that are spoken between all these individual souls? What is the place that unites them and brings out the individual part that each soul has in this greater organization? See if you can feel into the resonance, the very specific resonance of that feeling of being part of a group, of being part of something bigger. And sense into the power that comes from drawing on many, on the gifts and talents of each individual, creating a collective force. And sense how the resonance of this power brings greater power to each individual. Greater focus, purpose, awareness. And feel how the resonance within the group creates much more power in anything that extends outward from any individual in the group. How this unified vibration lends power to each individual like a beam of light hitting a prism. And the scattering of the rainbow, the rays of the rainbow leading out to each individual, feeding, flowing through out into the greater world. And take a moment of integration, bringing together any insights you may have had. And when you're ready, bringing your presence back to this group, into the screen. If anyone has anything they want to share or questions or anything that came up.
I would actually love to share something. When we start feeling into this time or this resonance within our being, of the soul purpose, or this this resonance with soul, basically, it was almost like I became a paradoxon. Like I became a living paradoxon of being on one side insanely centered and so at the depth of my core, while becoming very expansive. So yeah, that was just quite like I never reflected on it so consciously, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, that's the power of getting in to the level of soul magic, is that we're infused with not only our own power, but the power of a group, of a collective, of a belonging. And that resonance, it has a way of consolidating resources and being able to point them in specific directions, whether they be to an individual or a project. And these soul collectives, we can be part of many. It's not just one. We're not just part of one. And there can be many ways that this happens, whether we're actually in communication with these individual souls, like we talk to them every day or something, like that doesn't have to happen. Like that is one way where things get really manifested on the physical plane. But there's also, I was thinking to this experience I just had recently where John had led us through a meditation and I saw, as I went to each level, like we went to matter, we went to spirit, we went to monad. And as I went through each portal, there was a point where I went through the heart of the three Marys and the sort of my connection to Magdalene. And I went through the heart of the three Marys and I realized that the being of this being of the three Marys no longer had a soul, but there was a collective soul that I had a small part of this soul, and I saw there are people in my life who had it, but there's a huge collective of people who have, they have a living part of this particular soul in them. And so like this entity, like I have a soul and you have a soul, and there's the jewel and the lotus, and we can transmit, but it's like from that perspective, their soul had already fractalized into many and had disassembled to create a larger soul that was encased in a much, much larger being. So I am part of this greater being that has a soul. So from that place, that perspective, it's like, oh, like so much more can happen. And I don't, it may be in this particular life, I do a project based around that to create something very physical, but in a much bigger perspective, it doesn't, that is less, matters less, as like, I know that my soul, this part of my soul is doing this work in this life. No matter what I do, there's this part of me that's directing me to do this work. And whether it looks like I'm part of a group or not, I'm part of this group. And so there, it can be there, this soul work can happen on this level, and these communications can happen on this level. And that's where this intuition comes from. Like this place of soul, and the languages that are spoken in soul is a lot about this vibration of just knowing, because there's this greater part of you that's working towards something bigger that you may not even be conscious of. You may not be fully aware of. You may be, but there's a way that you may not be, because whatever is happening through you is happening on such a bigger level that you can't quite, like I personally can't quite understand it. I have resonance with what Magdalene is bringing. What the grand picture is, I don't think I even have the capacity to comprehend. So in a way, like the languages that are spoken through that part of soul, and particularly that part of my soul, I can only do what's set before me. You know, I do the work that's set before me without knowing what the greater picture is. Where on other levels of soul, there may be a person like Tignicula, for example, you know, like there's this temple that's wanting to come through, and it's taking very specific focus of individuals who need very specific things. And there's this web that goes out to help bring and birth this very particular project. And what is coming about partially is known. Like we may not know what the future and the purpose, but we know like, oh, the manifestation, and this very particular physical form of manifestation is known. But you know, working on these levels, there's ways that we're working on things that we don't even know, like a purpose that we can't articulate in very tangible sense, because the purpose comes through in something that's so much bigger than what we can actually comprehend. And that these levels of communication, it takes a lot of awareness to communicate and have the two-way communication on these levels. We need to be able to adjust ourselves to the very subtle ways that these languages speak within us. And they may speak through our bodies. And this is sort of like on that little chart, it'd be like the soul matter bit. They may speak through our bodies, and our bodies are saying, I fucking have to go put my body on this piece of land or next to this particular person, or like, you know, have to do this particular activity, like dance or something. Like I have to do that, and I don't know why. There's no logical sense of saying like, I know why I have to have my body on this particular piece of land. They can come through as these senses, so that language of soul speaking through matter is like, I physically have to put my body in this place. I don't know what comes of it. I have no idea. I don't know if I'll even know if anything comes of it. Like I may go and put my body there, and something happens, but it doesn't necessarily create a tangible outcome that I see. But something can happen in these subtle realms, and you have to be able to listen and know when is the right time to put myself in a place, when is the right time to make this other commitment to be with somebody else, and when is that done. So these languages speaking on the soul realm start to get a lot more subtle and a lot muddier, and sometimes a lot harder to really know what's right, know what the thing you're supposed to do is. But if you trust that subtleness, if you trust that sense and can get into the space of being responsive, yeah, because the languages of the soul are much more, you're in response to this greater calling, you're in response to something else. So there's a call and response happening. And that the feedback you get then is your own soul being uplifted, your own sense of like, oh, something is happening through me, something like there's some resonance. So that those communications, and on very practical ways, like you can practice this by doing all the crazy shit that just comes up in the back of your head, and then seeing what happens, paying attention to the response you get. And there may not be this very logical outcome, but the response you will get, like, oh, I have this crazy notion I have to go put my body in this weird fucking place, and I have no idea why. Like a couple years ago, I woke up, it was literally like, I woke up 3 a.m. I was like, I have to go to this place in Colorado. And I don't know why. Like, I have no idea. And I like 3 a.m, I was researching online, and it was like very specific. I had this, I woke up, it's like breath work, this place. I was like, okay. And I looked up online, and there was a breath work thing happening at this particular place. I had no idea of that beforehand. I was like, okay, I don't know why my body has to be in that place. You know, like that's the thing. Like it just came out of nowhere. And then it was a directive that I could not follow. But yeah, so do the crazy shit, do the crazy shit, and then see what the response is, you know, and you'll know that difference between the languages of like, oh, this is just my personality kind of working something out. Because when that happens, it's like, you know, like something, you may get excited, but it's not a lasting thing. It's not something, there's not this resonance of like this fire burning in your belly. Where when you do it and something happens, you feel this, it's almost like a cog turning in a wheel where something like clicks into place, and there's this like settling when you're in response to these languages. Yeah, there's a real resonance, and there's a place where it you may not know how or why, but it sets you on fire. There's a place in you that burns because you're in response to this. And it may burn with a purpose that's very particular and specific and tangible, and it may burn with this other purpose that is very intangible, but there's a sensation of you pushing you forward. All right, is this making sense? Are people getting this? Great, cool. So we only have a few minutes left, and I want to go into the monadic, but maybe we'll just, instead of going through an experiential, because on this level of magic, things are like there's no more consciousness, there's no more individual awareness sort of like left in this, like awareness on this level and magic on this level comes with that complete disintegration of the I. Like there's no like when you have soul, you're still working through the small I to bring forth the big I. When you head into the monadic languages, and I'm sure everyone in this call has had experiences of this. It's not that it's so high out there that there's no way we can experience it. But this kind of magic and this kind of language comes to us. It's those moments when we become the magic, when we become one with that force of life. And experientially, this can be those lightning moments where something happens like so quick and so fast, and it changes something in you completely. And in those moments, we are revealed, like we're that place in us is revealed of this one life force and how this one life force is moving through us. So basically at this point, we're becoming the tools of a greater intelligence. Like we are the spells of something else. We're the magic that's created by this greater being. And it's like we are the words that are spoken by this greater being that is us, that is everything. It's not like it's something else outside of us, but it's that one life. And this is that, like that fourth quality that we're moving into, is being in a place where this resonance comes through more regularly and with more intention. And there's very few people who have that, who are on that level of communication, of magical communication or subtle communication. But we all have the capacity for it, and we all have the moments where that lightning comes through and something happens through us, where we can come into complete union with it. And I think about like one of the ways I can think about making this more tangible or more like concrete is thinking about plant medicine. So there's different ways you can do plant medicine. There's different things we can get out of it if one were to do it. I think the most common way, like a lot of these places, a lot of medicine rituals kind of come at it like, oh, like you get to go on this experience. This is a journey. You go, you do this thing, and you are the receiver of this information. You are the receiver of something that comes through, and it comes through this intelligence, which is actually the soul of a plant, of a hyper, what do they call it? Superconscious, the superconsciousness of a particular plant is speaking to you. And from that place of superconsciousness, it contacts your superconsciousness. So we can have that where we're kind of like objects being moved around by this greater force, and we become aware of it. And then we think, okay, that was the plant, and the only way I can experience that is going back to the plant medicine. Or we can come at it from this place where like we are participants, and I can direct, like people who do a lot of plant medicine can then come to a place of like, oh, like I am in reverence to this thing, but I also know that I am empowered enough to direct some of my experience of saying like, hey, take me to this particular place, or I want to utilize you to get into this particular piece of my psyche I can't crack through. So we get to use it, we start using it as a tool and taking it and integrating it, and knowing that the plant is only showing us something that we already have, and then being able to integrate that into our lives. And so people who are doing plant medicine in a real proactive way, like this is where they're coming from. And then there's a way that we can use plant medicine where we become active co-creators, where we go into it knowing we are part of the same super consciousness as the plant we're interacting with, and that we become co-creators in that experience, in that participation in the life force. And so there's a way, then it's like contacting this greater thing and becoming one with it. We're no longer things that it's working through. We're no longer objects upon which it's projecting. We become that consciousness. We become that. But being able to sustain that. See, plant medicine can give us those experiences, but then being able to sustain that experience of like complete wholeness, complete oneness, complete interaction with the world, in a way that takes in the whole of everything, the beauty and the ugliness and the greatness of humanity and the terribleness of humanity and all the things that can come with that. So when we get into the levels of these languages, at this point, most of us can only experience it in very small doses, but it only takes tiny, tiny doses. Like you only need a homeopathic injection of monad in order to it to resonate in huge ways from you, through you, and out into the field. And a lot of these languages, like you can reach for it. There are practices you can do to learn how to speak it and to hold it. But for most of us at this point, it's like waiting for the lightning. We can stand on the top of the hill with a lightning rod, but we still have to wait for the lightning. You know, we still have to wait for it to come down. We're still like putting ourselves in a better environment for it, but there's still this level of needing, not having this direct communication. But I think the wave of the future, like what is coming, is being able to communicate on these levels and be in this resonance on a very stable way. And this is, I guess, the probably fourth to fifth initiation, is when we can have a stable resonance with this kind of communication, so that we're not just something communicating. We are the communication. We are the magic. We become the tools of a greater being. So yeah, our time's coming to an end. I want to respect everyone's time, and I thank you so much for showing up. But I want to open up, if you need to go, just go. No apologies, no explanation needed. And if you have any reflections or questions or anything else, just unmute yourself. Well, beautiful. And if not, then we'll go ahead and close the class. And yeah, thank you all so much for showing up and being part of this. I'm gonna post this on. I'll post the recording later, and we'll see you next time. Mwah.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It was really amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, this is incredible.
Mm.